Let me say that the last day of the tour is next Sunday. That's May 23rd from 10 to 3. And the Green Home Tour is coming up on June 6th and June 13th. The Green Home Tour will kick off with a visit to my and my husband's home. We just did a lot of remodeling and installed a number of green features like solar panels and a heat pump for heating and cooling air. We have an induction range we'd love to show you. You can register for the East Bay Green Home Tour here at eastbaygreenhome.com. You need to have a separate registration than the garden tour. So we will be going now to Marty Mertens' garden in Berkeley. So this is our last garden of the day. And Marty's garden, some of the plants in this garden were installed almost 20 years ago, but it was just in 2019 that Marty planted more than 100 species of California natives in this garden that she designed jointly with Andy Liu. And this last year, she has planted many more plants. Keystone plants in Marty's garden, on which many species of butterflies and moths can lay their eggs, include wild cherry, currant, sages, lupin, and manzanita, to name a few. So let us go now. Let me say that Marty has seen more than 30 species of birds in or above this garden. And let's go now and see Marty Mertens. Hi, Marty. How are you?
Hi, Kathy. I'm fine.
Good. So thanks for showing us your garden today, Marty.
You're welcome. I'm so glad to be here.
All right. So I know you've been working with native plants for a very long time, haven't you? How long since you've had your before this your other native plant garden? How long have you been gardening with natives for?
Well, I started back in 1992 as a volunteer at the Tilden Botanic Garden. And there were some amazing people there. Wayne Roderick was working as a volunteer, and there were a lot of plants named after him. S. and Jacques Anderson, who started the volunteer program there, were very inspiring people. So that was a real revelation to me, finding about all the different species. We worked on propagation every Thursday morning in a little volunteer chalet. I fell in love with native plants then.
Well, it shows in your garden. Let's go. Should we go take a look at your first video?
Okay.
So
Go ahead.
Welcome to my native plant garden. My name is Mardi Sicular-Mertens, and I'm here to talk about gardening for wildlife and the advantages of growing native plants. Native plants are drought tolerant. We live in a Mediterranean climate. These native plants are adapted to this dry weather, 5 months of almost no rain. Also, a native plant garden gives us biodiversity, which is a great variety of different kinds of plants. There are over 6,500 native plant species in California. And here I'm growing just a mere fraction, 120, but it still seems like a lot of species. And this garden is designed to attract, support, nurture wildlife, especially urban pollinators. These include bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, and what do these pollinators need? They need food in the form of nectar, and they need water in the form of water features. I have 5 bird baths. They need shelter, so we let the plants grow a little bit wild to give them shelter, and places to raise young. Food, water, shelter, and places to raise young. So I'd like to talk about some of the plants that provide these for our wildlife. This is a ceanothus. It's an interesting variety. It's all white, and its name is snow flurry. And I often find it buzzing with bees of all kinds. Berkeley has more than 500 kinds of native bees, and they seem to love to nectar and gather pollen from this ceanothus. And here we have a plant called yampa. This plant is a host plant. That means it's for caterpillars. Remember, butterflies have 4 stages of life. They start out as an egg. The egg becomes a caterpillar. The caterpillar becomes a butterfly. And then, the caterpillar becomes a pupa first, a little chrysalis. And then the butterfly emerges from the chrysalis. So each butterfly is a specialist. And the beautiful Anna swallowtail can only lay its eggs on plants in the carrot family. And here's some information about the Anna swallowtail. So they start out as an egg. The egg becomes first a small caterpillar. They lose their skin 5 times and get bigger and bigger. And then they go into the pupa stage. And finally we get this beautiful magical butterfly, the Anna swallowtail. So grow host plants, because if you want butterflies, you have to have caterpillars. Here's some more. Well, this is a time of year when we can celebrate the great glory of spring wildflowers and their colors, bringing colors to our gardens. More host plants include native grasses, which grow in bunches. And these grasses used to cover the hillsides of California. They stay green year-round. They're drought tolerant. And wildflowers grow in between them. Here's some of the wildflowers we have. These are bird's eye gilia. These are yarrow, Achillea millefolium. These are frying pan poppies. And I highly recommend this plant for any garden. It's called verbena. It's a native verbena. And it blooms year-round, and it's a great nectaring plant. Butterflies like to have a little platform to land on. So you see butterflies nectaring on this. Bees like it too. These grasses are a host plant. The skipper butterflies, little kind of peanut butter colored butterflies, lay their eggs on it. These are buttercups, which self-seed. These are in the poppy family. They're called cream cups. And then if you come up here, there's kind of a beautiful combination of California wildflower color. These are Penstemon heterophyllus, foothill penstemon. And you can see this kind of, it's like a palette of colors with the cream cups, the white monkey flowers, the beautiful deep purple iris. And then it's always exciting this time of year because you look at the buds and then one day they just all burst open. So here we have a plant called bush anemone, or Carpentaria californica. And if you focus on these lovely buds, in a few days they're all going to burst open. In fact, there's one just starting to open down there. They're going to be a pure white. And here's a native mallow. You see the flower. It's a beautiful, large, kind of lilac-colored flower. And there are a lot of buds. This plant just volunteered here. Somehow a seed dropped down in an unlikely spot between 2 rocks, and I let it grow, and it turned out to be a native mallow, which is nice to have. So here we have food for urban pollinators. Urban pollinators are our best shot at wildlife. We can create a patchwork quilt of habitat gardens, and we can make even wildlife corridors if we get enough people to grow native plants, which bring back the insects, which bring back larger insects, which bring back the birds. And here's another form of food for birds. This is a manzanita. It's one of the keystone species of any native habitat. Beautiful urn-shaped colored flowers in the spring. And now this time of year we have these berries. Manzanita means little apple, and the native people use them to make a kind of a drink by drying them, grinding them into a powder, and adding water. So one wonderful thing about native plants is that you get a lot of really nice scents. And so the plant there is kind of off green color. It's called California sagebrush, and it has a beautiful scent. It's a quintessential scent of the American West. And this see, it's nice that the leaves are a little bit a different color. They're calmer, kind of pastel color than the rest of the greens. And I mentioned the ceanothus, that beautiful snow flowery plant. This other very tall plant with blue flowers is another species of ceanothus. And then here on the ground we have a Yankee Point ceanothus, which stays low, never grows up into a shrub. And then right to the left of the fountain is another type of ceanothus. I think there are probably 60 to 80 species of ceanothus. That's the wonderful thing about biodiversity. You could just plant one. We have a whole garden of ceanothus. So here's one of our native bumblebees. Yeah, finding pollen. So yeah, I enjoyed showing you around the front garden, and now I'll be ready to answer questions, and then we'll go to my backyard garden, which is a shade garden and quite a bit larger. See you in the backyard.
Okay, thank you, Marty. So we had some questions. So what kind of soil do you have in your garden?
Well, I have a lot of native conifers, so it's actually very rich soil to begin with, because over many years, it's like a forest floor. The pine needles have composted, but I did add a lot of soil amendments from American Soil in Richmond. My favorite is it's called Walt Whitman.
Mm.
It acts like a sponge. It soaks up water and keeps the plants moist. So it's really I haven't lost a lot of plants when I use that American Soil Walt Whitman, and it also makes the soil rich. And I find that my native plants actually do like the richer soil, or they perform better with a richer soil.
Mm-hmm. And what do you do about watering when you're installing plants? Like, what's kind of your watering regime for new plants?
Well, I try to only plant in the rainy season, and that's been kind of challenging this year because there hasn't been enough rain. But I don't start planting until the first rains come, and then I rely on the rains to keep the plants alive.
So do you supplemental water? Do you water?
During the rainy season, I don't usually have to water. I just
Mhm.
water each plant in as I plant it, just with a watering can and water around in a circle. And then the soil will be pretty wet when I start from the rains. And then I plant December, January, February, and then when the rains stop, I do have to water by hand every once in a while. But the fog causes a drip that waters my garden.
Because you're in the Berkeley Hills, so.
Yeah, we're at 1,000-foot elevation, and whenever it's foggy, we get condensation. And it's rainy in my backyard.
Okay. And someone asked where you got your plant signs.
Oh, yes. I ordered them from a company. I should have the name down. It's a company that Kathy told me about in Rochester, New York. I think it's called Precision Signs. But I could put that up later on the website.
Okay.
Lovely, very nice signs, and they're fairly affordable. Each sign costs $3 or $4, I think.
And your front garden is a sunny space. What was in there before you started planting your natives?
Well, I think it was mostly juniper.
Yeah, not uncommon. Okay, why don't we go and take a look at your shady backyard now?
Okay.
Welcome to my backyard garden. My garden is located in the Berkeley Hills, nestled against Tilden Park. Today is April 18th, and we're right in the middle of spring bloom. So the backyard garden also has many plants that support wildlife, and it's basically a shade garden because we're surrounded by 5 large native conifers. So looking over here, we have a Sequoia gigantea, giant redwood. This is a Monterey cypress. On this side, we have a Douglas fir, a Monterey pine and ponderosa pine. So I'll talk about gardening in the shade. And so coming here, one of the things that we need for wildlife is food. And I have about 12 different kinds of berry plants, which I'll point out. I love to grow berries. We can eat them too. These are thimbleberries. And thimbleberries are like a delicious wild raspberry. Birds love them, people can eat them. And these thimbleberry plants are leafing out, and they'll go into bloom soon. And the berries are ripe in the summer. This is an elderberry. Elderberry can be used to make elderberry wine, elderberry jam. Can be delicious with sweetener added. These are snowberries. Symphocarpus Tilden Park. The species name is Tilden Park, which is where I live, right next to Tilden Park. So this is truly native here. Those are kind of a currant, a wild currant with the waxy leaves, native to Southern California. It's Catalina perfume. And here we have a Catalina cherry turned into a tree, but it has actual kind of wild cherries. And just in the last couple of days, these beautiful native iris have come into bloom. It's Iris Douglasiana. Here's a very lovely spring blooming wildflower. It's closely related to miner's lettuce or Indian lettuce. It's called candy stripe. Its name is Claytonia siberica. And here's another type of berry. This is, where is it? This is coffee berry. And what are some other plants that love shade and flourish in the shade? This is a great plant for the shade. It's called fringe cup, and it's unusual. It not only likes shade, but it likes dry shade, which is very good. Many plants that like shade need to stay wet, and that's hard to do in this dry climate. So for excellent ground covers in the shade, this is called redwood sorrel, Oxalis oregana. And right now it's in bloom. It's got lovely green leaves, and it spreads by underground runners. So it's taken over this whole area. It's a fairy land-like ground cover. And see this beautiful color of the underside. It's an adaptation that helps it grow in the shade. So another shade-loving plant is called coral bells, or Heuchera. This is Heuchera maxima. Here's a very delicate little member of the lily family. It's called false Solomon seal, and it dies back to nothing in the winter, but comes up quite heartily in the spring. So other plants that do wonderfully in the shade are Aquilegia formosa, or columbine, bleeding heart, or Dicentra formosa. So these little hearts, each one has a little drop of blood on it. And this beautiful fairy bells, they're hard to grow in a garden, but these are doing beautifully. And then, so in this back garden, we have plants that love the shade. We have plenty of flowers, nectaring plants for butterflies, birds, bees, hummingbirds. Here's a little squirrel. Oh, there's a California towhee right over there. So birds are attracted to this garden. I've counted about 35 species of birds. 35 species of birds down here in the garden. Here we have and the bird feeder. We have can't think of the name. Birds that like to travel with goldfinches. The pine siskin. So the birds really appreciate bird feeders. They love the bird feeders. They love seeds on the ground, and they love the water features. They're constantly taking baths. So over here, in the sunnier part of the garden, we have another host plant. It's really a fascinating host plant. And this is the host plant for the beautiful pipevine swallowtail. And I saw one here today. It has a heart-shaped leaf, and it has very strange flowers that look like this. It's called Dutchman's pipevine because it looks like a meerschaum pipe. So here are the small caterpillars from the eggs. Here's the pupa stage, which is a chrysalid. And then this beautiful butterfly, it's black with blue iridescent kind of hairs on its back. So I hope that I'll get caterpillars this year. Then I guess we'll wind our way up into the upper part of the garden. You can see, oh, this is a lupin. This is a great plant, both as a host plant and a nectaring plant. I love the leaves, the way they're called palmate. It's like the palm of your hand. This is trillium, which is it's a gorgeous flower in these sets of 3 leaves. And so from up here, you can look out over this part of the garden is kind of in development, but it has Ribes sanguineum glutinosum, Ribes sanguineum glutinosum, which is a wild currant. And you can see the Douglas iris just coming into bloom. So gardening in the shade can be an advantage. There are many plants that love the shade. And thank you so much for coming to my garden. I'll be available to answer questions after this video is done. Maybe we can look at 1 or 2 more plants up here. Here's a little hillside of monkey flowers, mimulus species. And up there, beautiful California poppy, our state flower, Schultzia californica. So thank you for coming to my garden. It's really been a pleasure to show you around in this beautiful spring. Looking out over the coastal range of California. Thank you, and hope to see you in person next year.
Thank you so much, Marty. I hope to see you in person next year too. So we had some questions about oxalis. Do you want to explain about the difference between the yellow oxalis from South Africa and our own local native oxalis?
Sure. Well, you'll find redwood sorrel growing very heartily in coastal redwood forests. So it grows under coastal redwoods all along the coastal range in California. And it's it's the same genus as the invasive species, but it's a different species. So its whole name is Oxalis oregana.
So our own native oxalis, we do have a native oxalis here, which grows naturally in the redwoods. If you went over to Muir Woods, you would see it. You can see it over here as well. So the common name is redwood sorrel, and the yellow flowering oxalis, and that is a kind of a pinkish flower, doesn't it? Our own redwood sorrel.
Yeah, white to pink, yes.
Yeah. And then the yellow flowering oxalis comes from South Africa, where it doesn't have its enemies here, so it just takes over here. It can be eradicated, and the trick to getting rid of the non-native South African oxalis are to pull it as soon as you can tell it's oxalis, before it's had a chance to make those little brown corms, or to sheet mulch very heavily over it, like several layers of cardboard, and put wood chips on top, and then by the time it finally works its way up through those, it's kind of weak and frail, and it gives you an edge. Don't you think, Marty? Have you had success controlling oxalis in that way?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it is hard to get rid of. It grows by underground kind of runners. But
Hard but not impossible, viewers. Take heart.
stay at it.
So, Marty, what birds have you seen in your garden? I know you've said more than 30 species of birds. What have you seen that's been of interest to you?
Well, just yesterday, I saw a black-headed grosbeak.
Oh, wow.
They actually have a beautiful song. And I listened to it yesterday. It has trills, it has gorgeous notes, and it sang for a long time. It was really special. Um,
Sounds like it.
One of my favorites, the spotted towhee, beautiful bird. We have large flocks of lesser goldfinches. The lesser goldfinch is the smallest finch in Northern California and possibly the smallest finch in the world. It only weighs about, I don't know, they said, 4 ounces. It's a very, very small bird, but very pretty with the bright yellow breast in the breeding season. The other favorites, I love the pine siskins. I had flocks sometimes with 30 to 35 pine siskins. Year round, I have the dark-eyed junco, which is a sweet little bird. I have, what are some others? Well, of course, the California towhees. It's nice every once in a while to see a Buick's wren. They have a tail that sticks straight up. Let's see, what are some other nice ones? Well, of course, I have, the jays, both the scrub jay and the Steller's jay. And once in a while, we get a predator. We get a kestrel, even let's see, even the peregrine falcon has come.
Wow.
Of course, Cooper's hawks, because once you have that many birds, I have a large flock also of band-tailed pigeons.
Hmm.
A large pigeon, and there's a flock of 30 to 34 that come all together, and it's quite amazing to see them. I know they're the closest living relative to the passenger pigeon.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Which I was able to see. I was able to hold in my hands a dead passenger pigeon at the UC Zoological.
Oh, wow.
And I just thought it's just a very beautiful bird, actually. And I thought I was
I
sad.
read a book about them.
What?
I just read a book about the passenger pigeon with my daughter.
You did,
I
yeah.
did. Yeah, it was so interesting.
They're a beautiful bird, it's nice to see the band-tailed pigeons because they're a close relative.
Well, I have time for one more question, Marty, and that is, what can you suggest that people could do now to begin changing their own gardens? What would you suggest if someone's sitting here watching and they're thinking, I want to do something different?
Well, I don't know. I think I might start with a bird bath or two. It's such a dry year, and I find all the pollinators are coming to my bird baths, including large groups of bees are kind of sucking on the water and all kinds of insects. So you can get a very inexpensive bird bath. That's a nice thing to start with. Anybody can pick one anywhere in the garden. They like it in the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we'll do some research on host plants because butterflies are looking for places to lay their eggs. So, plant a few native grasses, just a few. You usually need 3 to 5 plants for the butterflies to be able to find them. But native milkweed for monarchs, yampa for the anise swallowtails, pipevine for the pipevine swallowtails. Good to plant host plants, and it's nice to just start with a couple of these keystone plants. You can always start with a manzanita, even if you have a small space. Start with manzanita, start with the ceanothus. Those are really great anchor plants.
Okay, well, I am going to say, Marty, thank you so much for showing us your garden. It's beautiful, and I hope we can have you on the real life tour next year.
You're welcome. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to now share my screen, and let me thank our major sponsors one more time: the Alameda County Flood Control and Water Conservation District, the Contra Costa Clean Water Program, and the Contra Costa Water District. I'd like to thank our community sponsors for supporting the tour. And let me say thank you to you for sticking with us through this long day. And I hope to see you next Sunday. That'll be the last day of this year's virtual Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tour. All right. Thank you very much.